Hi, welcome. This continues the reading of Walking a Rainbow, written by me, Michael Shearer, about the walk on the Camino de Santiago with my son, then aged 9. This is chapter 26, called Coping with Others. The next town, Hospital de Orbigo, is mostly bridge. More like a causeway, it goes on and on. Cobbled, ancient, one wagon wide, it spans the floodplain of the Rio Orbigo. Something of a resort. From the elevation of the bridge we watched families sitting on the beach of the river, picnicking. Splayed bodies glistening with oil, searing like burgers. Fat mums in tight shorts licking ice cream. Swarthy dads holding their bellies in, looking at girls in bikinis. Kids squealing for whatever it was they hadn't got. Queues at vans buying trash. People in the river with bars of soap lathering themselves. A babble of noise. We descended to the beach at a large bar like a bus station crowded with people. It was raucous. Several hundred unsatisfied lives were erupting in noisy spleen. Raw-faced, sunburnt people with harsh voices shouted at whining kids, then slapped them. Some sat in overheated sullenness, simmering a row. Everywhere were testy people without will, animate, irritated puppets. We picked our way by pushchairs and bulging plastic bags over a floor littered with cigarette papers, tissues and toothpicks, and slewed with beer and spit. While Claudio consulted the sweaty, overworked and harassed bar staff, we sat in a corner at a table covered with glasses half full of stagnant beer. It was like sitting amid a roadworks with pneumatic drills going full pelt. "Do we have to stay here?" I shouted over the hubbub when he returned. "The mayor owns the bar, the refuge also. We wait for the key. He is coming." We waited an hour, getting drained by the chaotic energy all around. Claudio, apparently immune, wrote up his diary. The key arrived and we trooped out with relief, then through endless campsites and caravan parks. People playing football, putting up tents, frying sausages. Kids two-handedly struggling with huge plastic containers of water, dragging them along the ground. Radios battled for the very air, until, leaving all this behind us, we reached a brick bungalow, which was the refuge. "Don't drink the tap water, it's bad," said Claudio. We explored our home like newlyweds in their first house. We had the place to ourselves. There were bedrooms with lumpy mattresses, a kitchen with much gritty black wrought iron, a living room with some torn armchairs and an open grate full of burnt paper. An oasis of peace. It was wonderful. Ebi dumped her gear in a room and sat on the shady veranda and meditated, the erect nipples of her flat breasts sticking into her t-shirt like crab's eyes, her mouth in a sexy smirk. I sat in the shade by the door on a park bench, like a Maharaja at a railway station. Eugenio arrived, limping badly, but twitching with pleasure to see us, like some malfunctioning clockwork toy. He'd strained some thigh muscles. I gave him an ankle pill. By late evening it grew chilly. I gathered wood from around the house, and Kes and Claudio lit a fire in the grate. Idling on the veranda, having a smoke, I saw a meteor, and marvelled at the clarity of the Milky Way, stars thickly strewn like the lights of a thoroughfare for galactic beings, a gash in space. I took a stroll down by the river along its sandy soil. The day trippers had all departed, leaving testimony of empty bottles and cigarette ends, and abandoning the bridge to the sky and the still night. Silent and secret it stood in the cold light. I walked to the middle of the bridge, over the knobbly cobbles like solid reptilian eggs, stood and smoked a cigarette in the midst of the quiet night, watched the beautiful unfolding dynamic curls of evanescent smoke, and mused. Historically, this bridge is supposed to have had some mad knight, Suero de Quiñones, who wore an iron fetter around his neck to show his love for his lady, but only on Thursdays. He jousted with a woman's blouse over his armour and challenged all who approached to mortal combat. Bridges are dangerous places where the mind may go a bit peculiar and death may strike. In medieval accounts of the way, bridges take a prominent place, especially one known as the bridge which trembles. Obviously some fearful symbolic crossing. Bridges are narrow, there is a focusing. Wherever they appear, bridges link worlds, of course. Shaped like half a vesica, they act like metaphors joining the disparate. A bridge is an incarnate leap, a frozen trajectory, a state of mind between. All forms of the bridge are themselves empathically connected. The arc, the ladder, the pass, the straight, the tunnel, the rainbow. Boats are bridges. All avatars of Hermes, god of translation, bringer of ideas. All resonant symbols are bridges. The whole walk is a bridge in a sense. The Camino is a long, narrow way to enlightenment, a yellow brick road, a snake to travel down, a dragon. A pilgrim is swallowed by the whale. The Milky Way is the night's rainbow. That night I dreamt of crushing strawberries over the breasts of a beautiful woman and licking off the fruit. I woke to the sight of Ebi packing. It didn't take long. She had none of the practical objects necessary. No soap or towel, no toothpaste or toothbrush or shampoo. No knife, fork or spoon, no food, no water bottle, no cup, no maps. She walked in an old pair of plimsolls with no socks. The rucksack was 3/4 full of knickers, no bras. She embarked on an elaborate series of neck exercises, then gave herself a vigorous massage, culminating in slapping herself on her skinny back. Amazingly, Kes was not only up, but washing. The massive sink in the kitchen had no plug. Kes had solved the problem by climbing onto the draining board and sticking his heel in the plug hole. "Morning, Dad," he said, splashing himself with cold water. Extraordinary. Clearly Orbigo was not only the place of the body, but powerfully so. A place called Hospital must always have cared for the tired and torn bodies of pilgrims. Outside, the morning was girding itself up to fry the day's tourists. Ebi had lain out on the brown grass to sunbathe. She had stripped to her knickers and rolled them down to reveal the absolute maximum of flesh. Even in my deprived state, some sheep and goats were beginning to seem attractively coy. This was not a pretty sight. She looked like a gutted herring. We left in a group, passing campers playing tennis. Eugenio was free of muscle troubles and raving about my ankle pills. He went off to find a doctor to demand some of his own. Claudio disappeared to return the key. We queued at the public fountain in the centre of town to fill our water bottles. Nearby, a street vendor sold live young chicks from a cardboard box. They had been dyed vivid green, butter yellow and reddish purple. They skittered about like toys, drawing an appreciative crowd. Nearby, an ice cream van sported a map of the world which divided the planet up into flavours of ice cream. "Not much strawberry," said Kez. "Too right," I replied. Kez bought his favourite, Frigo Dedo, ice finger, a lurid pink ice lolly in the shape of a hand. He sucked on it like some epicure cannibal. A short track with deposits of rubbish like spore, packages and plastic bottles, a rusty lock and a key which didn't fit, a scorched one-eyed doll singed and maimed, then road, and more road, stretching out from Orbigo like an asphalt nerve. Heavy traffic. The town was a single organism. People served it like corpuscles and bacteria rushing down the roads like the water in the canals. Ebi stuck to Claudio like a terrier, endlessly yapping. They pounded on ahead. Kez and I made up new verses to well-known songs and taught Eugenio a modified chorus. Soon he was happily bawling, "Wank tiddly daddy-o, there's whiskey in the jar." After too many dreary miles, we turned off the road into some thyme-strewn scrub and followed a line of crosses. As we trudged down the path, a cheery voice called from some poor shade off to the side. Claudio waved. Ebi squatted by his side. She was naked to the waist and rubbing herself with a cucumber. "Just in time for some food," said Claudio. He was mixing something in a plastic bowl and he showed it to me. "Delicious. Want some?" "What is it, Claudio?" "Apple and cucumber." "Not for me, thanks." "Yum," enthused Claudio, sampling it. "Want some, Kez?" "No, thanks." I could see from Kez's eyes that we were thinking likewise. I was wondering about the cucumber and its previous intimate relationships. Pasty green knickers soon appeared. Her painfully white flesh was slightly translucent, like a fish or an abscess. Kez and I politely took our leave. We climbed a desiccated slope to a climactic granite cross and an escarpment overlooking a far plain with, in its midst, all of Astorga on a hill. A twin-towered cathedral squatted on it like a fat dog with its ears pricked. The first bar on the edge of Astorga was like a working men's club, plain, with 4 square wooden tables and chairs, all male. Old men in black berets and the unemployed vociferously played cards and dominoes. The TV programme, a dubbed American film, was interrupted to announce the death of a famous bullfighter. He'd been gored. There was sudden uproar. The games were abandoned. Everyone stood and gesticulated and argued. The fatal accident was shown in replay. Then again, in close-up, in slow motion. The sleek horn going in just above the thigh and up into the guts. Hoisted by the spike in his bow and already dying, the sleek-haired corpse, in its flashy suit of lights, was tossed aside like a doll. Helpers with plush blue capes rushed to his side. There was blood on the sand. The visceral aura of Orbigo reached to here. We walked quietly on down the Calle del Perpetuo Socorro, the street of unending succour, and steeply ascended to the wall of the Hospital de las Cinco Llagas, the 5 wounds. It had obviously been almost destroyed by fire recently. In town, I left Kez in a bar with the bags while I went to find some meths for the stove. I was directed to a chemist. The pharmacist was a gaunt, bearded man with a ravaged face, pits and gullies as if eroded by flash floods of caustic tears. "Alcohol de quemar?" I asked. "Alcohol for burning?" His empty eyes stared as if at some ghoul. I tried again. He looked puzzled, so I did a complete mime of cooking on the trail. I unpacked an invisible stove, set it up, got out the meths bottle, holding it up and pointing at it for emphasis, lit the burner, magicked up a frying pan and shimmied away cooking imaginary sausages. A pretty convincing performance, I thought. He was obviously impressed. I picked up my non-existent meths and waved it at him. He smiled a tragic smile and popped out the back. He returned with a small box like those used to hold smart fountain pens. Surely this couldn't be right. He opened the box and displayed its contents. It was a hypodermic syringe. "No, no," I said emphatically, and I wrote out the Spanish words. Unperturbed, he fetched my meths. The refuge was on the other side of town, on the outskirts. A large residential school for the disabled run by 2 Dutch brothers. One of them was tootling around by the entrance on a bicycle, waiting to greet pilgrims. He showed us to a gymnasium. A motley of sleeping bags were already dotted about on the floor. We staked our claim. At one end of the gym was a stage with theatrical drapes. When Claudio and Ebi arrived, they laid their sleeping bags on the stage behind the curtains. They retired early, as Claudio wished to investigate the Basque language and needed to explore her transformational grammar. I hung around in the morning waiting for Kez to awake. Claudio was up and doing my horoscope. One of my Leon letters contained the information of the time of my birth. He had found a table to sit and work at, and was consulting ephemera and marking the position of planets on a chart. He sat with his back to me, but I could see him shaking his head and loosely waggling his wrist in the Spanish gesture that indicated something heavy and troubling. I didn't interrupt. Later, the 4 of us took a quiet country road out of town, heading straight towards scrubby mountains with orange slashes like wounds. A pair of magpies fought in a field, leaping into the air and squawking. We soon reached a hermitage called the Ermita del Ecce Homo. It looked like a cross between a Wild West saloon and a minuscule ranch house. An amateur building of 2 boxes built of ill-matched stones with a simple open belfry. The porch, like a lean-to shed, was smothered with friendly graffiti of hearts and arrows, initials and names in pairs: Pedro and Raquel, Amelia and Lucas. At Murias de Rechibaldo we finally left the road, joining a dirt track of salmon-coloured dust through dry gorse. Soon our boots were coated with powder like stale pollen. "Look at this thing, Dad!" In the vegetation was a praying mantis, dull green, with an alabaster head and milky, evil eyes, with each pupil a black dot of pure malice, exquisite and alien enough to be from another planet. It stared at us with intense, malevolent concentration, waved its lethal fanged arms, and hissed like a snake. "Now that's all weird," commented Kez. Once we got an eye for their camouflage, we could spot hundreds in the bushes. Santa Catalina was mostly stone, with some wood and thatch. The main street was a dirt track, like a dried-out riverbed, littered with stones, flaking in the heat. The irregular stones of the simple, square-cut 2-storey houses were sandy and grey, and dark dusty red, as if condensed from the earth. The place would have been eerie in its empty silence but for Ebi. She chattered like a cicada on heat. By all that's holy, she could rabbit like a cuckoo on speed. A little wizened prune of a woman, born old, who never stopped prattling in a non-stop porridge of Spanish noise. Smitten with a virulent anger, I went and sat in the church porch to try and wrest some control. Then we were into moorland, wild and lonely heath, sweeping hills of rough heather, gradually becoming mountains, with clumps of oak in the valleys. The villages were increasingly forlorn, decaying streets, deserted houses collapsing back into the soil, thatch holed and weedy, a dilapidation that reached a melancholy dignity like ruined monasteries. Few people here. After a while it felt as if the country had been ravaged, wiped clear by hordes of pitiless praying mantids. Ebi gabbled on like some demented sports commentator. She must have had some Basque accent, because I couldn't understand a single word. The babble spoiled the silence. Normally, as we walked, we said little. I'd grown comfortable with the peace. But Ebi went on and on. It was like suffering a high-pitched nasal DJ with no music. After a while, Kez deliberately slowed down and walked 50 yards behind. Half an hour later, I did the same. Gradually, the unending spate ahead of us receded in step with her words, until it faded into peace once more. "That's a relief," said Kez, as she disappeared over the horizon, still chattering to Claudio. We never saw or heard her again.